Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this weekend. It's very exciting to actually see the applications transformed into actual people. So welcome to you and to your guests. We are thrilled that so many of you brought loved ones and friends with you to see the school, to learn more about us, and to help you make your decision. I also want to welcome several of the pre-law advisors who are with us this weekend, learning more about our programs so that they can help their students know who we are and make good matches for us. As Stephen said, I'm in my third year here at Texas Tech. I was at Stetson University College of Law for 16 years, so you can imagine my transition moving from this tropical climate with palm trees and parakeets to Lubbock. But I tell you what, it was absolutely the right decision. Texas Tech is an incredible place, a very special place, and I hope that many of you will choose to make it your law school. I know, having gone through this process, that picking a law school is one of the most important decisions you're going to make. Going to law school is tough. We are training you to represent people who need your help, many of whom are vulnerable. So you have a lot to learn. We have to teach you a lot of material, and we have to teach you how to maneuver in the legal and in the business world in a different way than you have ever done before. So it is a very challenging experience. So what I would say to all of you is, I'm sure all of you in this room have options of law schools, options of other things that you can do with the next 3 years. Pick a place that's a fit for you. Pick a place where you're comfortable with the people who are going to be your peers, because you're going to be spending time with the people who are sitting next to you and in your classrooms than anyone else. Pick a place where you're comfortable with the professors, with the staff, with the curriculum. So please, as Stephen said, during this weekend, ask questions. Don't be shy. We will give you the information. Yes, we want you here, but we want you here to stay here and to be happy here and to be very proud that if you come here and finish with us, that you love having that Texas Tech diploma on your wall. So why did I choose to come, and why do I think it was the right decision for me, and why do I think that you should highly consider it? Well, there are a lot of reasons, and you're going to meet a whole bunch of them, because it's the people and it's the programs. Let me start with the faculty. We have about 37 full-time faculty members here. We also have practitioners and judges who come in and are adjuncts for us and who teach part-time. This is an incredible group of individuals. They are smart, they are cutting edge, and the litmus test for them to get hired here is that they love working with students. Now, they publish. They do a lot of service, they talk to the media, but first and foremost, they must be outstanding teachers. And virtually all of them have an extensive practice experience. So these are people who didn't just learn the law, maybe clerk for a judge for a year, which is a great position, and come into law school. They clerked. They worked in a variety of places. They learned the law. So they will be able to help you master the theory and the practice. Tech law grads are known as being able to hit the ground running. And I tell you what, I travel all around the state. I spend 50 to 60% of my time on the road working with our alums on different programs, working with other attorneys, with judges. And what I hear is that tech law grads know what they're doing. They work hard, and they stick. What do I mean by stick? When I go to a lot of these large law firms, or when I go to the U.S. Attorney's Office or the Federal Defender, the most senior people in those places are our people. Other people have come and gone, and that's fine. A lot of people make changes during their careers. But a higher percentage of our people go, and they assume leadership roles, and they have that longevity. It really is a tradition of excellence. And that's the second group. Our alums are amazing. I love working with them. They are so open to coming back to Lubbock to work with our students, in the different cities where they are. We have a tremendous number of alums in the Dallas and Fort Worth area, in Austin and Houston and San Antonio, over in New Mexico. And I've never had one of them, when we've contacted them, to say, will you meet with one of our students? That student is interested in coming back to Fort Worth and is interested in practicing oil and gas. Will you take some time and meet with that person and talk to them about Fort Worth and the energy practice? They all say yes. They are amazing. So you will be part of that network. We also have a fantastic administrative staff here. Career services, bar preparation resources, academic support, the library. These people are committed to you. They are a really great support system for you to succeed in law school. I haven't worked with a better group of people. And then the students. This was something that really drew me here. I loved my students at Stetson. I've been into a lot of law schools doing inspections and audits or going to conferences, so I've been around a little bit. But the group here is special. They're collegial, a lot of type A's, competitive, but not cutthroat and mean. I really feel like our students like each other, and they work great in the classroom and outside of the classroom together. And again, that's important when you're thinking about what's my experience going to be like for the next 3 years when you're putting hours and hours and hours into this endeavor. Do you want to like the people sitting next to you? Do you want to go out and have a taco at Torchy's with them after class? Or do you just want to get back to your apartment and not have to deal with them? They're very collegial. They're very kind, very respectful. They're here to learn. They're here to learn so that they can contribute back to clients and the organizations they're serving. And I just think that's fantastic. That's the way it should be. And it's not everywhere. And some of our professors may share stories about where they went to law school if you ask them. It's a different environment here. So I think that a big selling point for tech is the people and the atmosphere and the culture and the tradition that you will be coming into. We also have fantastic programs. You've got to think about, do you know what you want to do yet? Or do you not know and you want to explore it? I feel like we have good things for both. So if you know you want to be a litigator, I tell you, we have one of the top advocacy programs in the country. I came from the school that's ranked #1 in U.S. News and World Report. I would match our tech program against my Stetson program every day. And I think if it went head to head and how the students are trained and the prizes that we've been winning the last few years, tech would actually beat my other school. Matter of fact, we did beat my other school one time when I was president. That was pretty fun. If you don't know, if you're like, I'm not sure, I want to try out something on the business side, I want to try out something maybe in health law, we've got a broad curriculum that allows you to explore, to find what your passion may be. So you don't have to just jump right in and say, okay, I'm going to specialize this and get yourself locked in. You have the ability to try things out and figure out what fits you. I remember when I was in law school, I always knew I was going to be on the litigation side and not the corporate side, but I didn't know what. And it seemed like every time I had a favorite class, that was what I was going to want to do until I went out and tried it out in a law firm and as an intern. I thought I was going to be an oil and gas attorney. That's why I came to Texas until someone handed me an oil and gas lease. It's like, no, thank you. I am not spending my life reading these little leases in 10-point fonts printed on both sides of the page. So you have the ability to do that. The other thing that I'm really committed to and our faculty and our staff is really committed to is allowing you to get experiences as a lawyer before you are a lawyer. We're very committed to hands-on education. Starting from the first year, your legal practice class goes beyond the legal writing that most schools teach in the first year. So not only will you learn to research and write like a lawyer, and I promise you, our people know how to do that in a good way, not all that legalese going on. But they teach you to interview clients, to negotiate, to mediate. And you get to do this in a simulated fashion from the first couple of weeks of law school. Moving on, we have simulation classes like trial advocacy, and we teach that combined with evidence. Evidence is really the theory of how you try a case, how you get the evidence in or keep it out. And trial ad is applied evidence. We teach them together. Not all law schools do that. We also have some amazing opportunities in the third year. We have a lot of live client clinics right here in Lubbock. So you can do tax, you can do criminal, you can do family, you can do housing, Social Security, and represent actual clients in their matters supervised by our own professors. And that's an incredible experience. I see Laura shaking her head over there, so be sure to ask Laura about that because she's on the next panel. We also have a new regional externship program. We have currently 60 positions across the state. So this isn't one of those bait and switch things when I sell you on the regional externship and you come and you find out there are 5 positions for everyone in your class. There's 60. And we haven't ever filled 60. So they're competitive. We don't just send anyone. You've got to interview with us. You've got to interview with the placement. But there's opportunity. What is this? In your third year, you can go for a full semester and earn a full semester of credit, and you can be currently in Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, San Antonio, and Houston, and we're hoping to open up D.C. By the time you would get there, we would have, hopefully, D.C. options. So where would you be externing? You can extern for courts like the Texas Supreme Court or the Court of Criminal Appeals in Austin. You can interview with Court of Appeals or trial judges, state and federal, in Dallas, Fort Worth, or Houston. You can work for the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Federal Public Defender's Office. You can work for the state level prosecutor or DA in some of these cities. Our first intern at the Tarrant County DA disposed of 700 cases and had 9 jury trials his semester there. Amazing experience. They want to hire him. So some of these positions can lead to jobs directly or indirectly. If you're more corporate-minded, we have positions in-house at 7-Eleven. We're about to close Pier 1. We have Children's Medical Center, and the one that everyone fights over, General Counsel for the San Antonio Spurs. We have legal aid positions, so if you want to do family law, or help people truly in need. We have those positions in every city where we are. We also have positions with agencies. So in Austin, for example, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality that does environmental law, we're there. We're with Parks and Wildlife. We're with the Railroad Commission that does energy, with the Comptroller's Office that does tax. We're with the State Office of Administrative Hearings, which covers a wide variety of topics that focuses on admin law. In Dallas, we're with federal agencies such as the Environmental Protection Agency, the Bankruptcy Trustee, Health and Human Services, and you get the idea. We also have immigration placements if you're interested in immigration and asylum. So this is a fantastic way to get involved in the city where you want to live and work. We then come teach live, so you keep that connection with the faculty. We match you with alum mentors who then take you to events in the community and introduce you to others. And we go in and take you to events in the community. So you can have the opportunity to network. Now, I'll tell you what, some of you, I'm sure, have been admitted to schools in Houston, in Dallas, in Fort Worth, in San Antonio. And you know what? None of them have full-time externship opportunities for you in those cities. We do. We do, and I'm very proud of that. We have a new leadership development program. It spans 3 years. We have a lot of first years in this. You do a variety of things, leadership luncheons, small group workshops. One of the ones we did recently was ethical issues and working with supervisors in your office. If someone you work for asks you to do something that you don't think you should be doing, how do you handle that? They don't teach that everywhere. We have book readings where we assign a book, and then our alums host you in their home for dinner to discuss the book, so you get to network with them in a very different way. The final step is developing, implementing, and then defending, almost like a PhD process, a leadership development project in the law school or in the community and anywhere in the state. Our first one was completed in Dallas, actually, so we're very excited about that. I didn't know any lawyers when I came to law school. Didn't come from a family of lawyers. That's sort of given if I didn't know any. And I tell you what, a lot of your faculty come from that background, that we knew we wanted to be in the law, but we didn't have a lot of the information about how to go out there and maneuver in a legal organization, in a business organization. We made a lot of mistakes. So we want to help you to fill in those gaps with this leadership development program. We also have a fantastic new pro bono program where we can match you with legal services organizations and individual attorneys doing pro bono work. So you get to work one-on-one with attorneys. Again, another way to network and to get that experience about what it feels like to be a lawyer before you get out. So, for example, some of the big firms in Dallas handle huge pro bono cases on constitutional law issues. We're talking to several of them, and they want us to send students who work with them for a full year on these cases. Often those law firms won't talk to anyone who's outside of the top 5 or 10% of their class. So how do you get an entree to those law firms to get them to know you and think of you when they have an opening? This is one of those ways. We also have other fantastic opportunities that I think you'll be able to talk to some of our faculty about. We have opportunities to study abroad for a semester or a summer. We have a lot of opportunities to be on law review. A lot of you have probably heard be on law review. Again, it's not a bait and switch. It's not going to be 20 people from your class selected for Law Journal. We have a lot of positions for people to gain that type of experience. I've also mentioned advocacy. A lot of you can participate in our award-winning advocacy competitions. There are many, many other things going on here. It's just a really great place for you to be able to design a program for you and that meets your goals. And again, tying back to the people, we'll work with you on this. We're not just like, here, go out and do what you want. You can if you want to, but if you want to sit down and talk with faculty, with staff, with alums, with upper-level students, it will happen here. Well, thank you for being here. I'm sorry that I didn't have more time to speak with you. Hopefully I'll bump into some of you informally at the reception and at the chili cook-off tomorrow. Do come to that. It's a lot of fun. It's one of my favorite events. You don't have to eat chili if you're kind of scared about that. We have other food, other things to do. But come hang out with us. You can really get a sense of the culture. Again, thanks to all of our prospective students for being here and their guests. This is a very family-friendly environment, and you're part of our family here. Stephen, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. All right. Moving on. Now, I think our panels are so awesome. Like, they deserve to be, like, in the spotlight, I think. Like, boom, like, we should do that. Like, right there. Is that good? I'm just kidding. It's like they're getting interrogated. I'm just kidding. So this next group, I thought it would be, we started doing this a couple years ago because, as I don't know, some of you may have heard, the legal employment market maybe isn't as great as it used to be. I know that's probably a shock to a lot of you. And so some of our students were like, oh, we really like to talk to alums that are in practice to see, what their thoughts are, or like what they did that was successful and that kind of thing. So we put this together a couple of years ago. I'll do some brief introductions, and then I'll open up for questions. So while I'm talking, start thinking about stuff that you would like to ask real live lawyer type people, okay? On the end over there, we've got Laura. Wave, Laura. Laura graduated she's class of 2010, but she graduated early in December 2009. She currently works for she's an assistant city attorney here in Lubbock. She was a science person, a science nerd. She got her degree in biochemistry from the University of Arkansas. And she's also really active with the Texas Young Lawyers Association, which you'll hear sort of things like networking a lot over the next 24 hours. That's one of those organizations that when you're a young lawyer, really great to get involved with because you meet a lot of people all over the state and you really get a good handle on things. Next up to her is T, right? You go by T? There you go. The people in the office were very excited when you were coming back to Donna and Sherry, where they love you to death. She has her own practice in Amarillo. So, and that's something a lot of people are thinking now, like, oh, hey, I got a law degree, I can work for myself, right? So if you're interested in something like that, it's a good person to talk to. She's a 2009 graduate. She did her undergrad at University of New Orleans, in New Orleans. But she's also practiced at bigger law firms. She practiced in New Orleans for a while before moving to Amarillo. And she's also active in young lawyer activities and in her community. And then last but certainly not least, Senor Bowtie. Lawrence Doss. Larry. Larry Doss works for a firm here in town, Mullenhort and Brown in 2001. So what Larry does is he's an appellate attorney for the most part. Is that a good way of characterizing Larry? So you see on TV like Law and Order. And that's trial level, right? There's a court, there's a jury, there's a judge, and objection, and witnesses, and that kind of stuff. Well, when you lose, or when you lose, you appeal it, and then that's sort of like the Supreme Court. You've got one person sort of at a podium arguing like certain points of law and that kind of thing. So that's kind of what Larry does, except without all the cameras following him around all the time. But he's argued before the Court of Appeals. You were at the Texas Supreme Court last year. So that's a really amazing opportunity. So I encourage you guys to ask him about that. He was also very successful here in law school. What year did you graduate? That's all here in the 99. That's awesome. So you graduated. I mean, you were like a wonderkind, right? You were about 20 years old when that happened.
I was 17.
17.
Yes.
Yeah. No, but Larry also, and you'll see Larry's better half maybe at some point here, Julie Doss. She's also an alum. She's an Aggie like me, and she's our Dean of External Relations, too. So they just love this place so much. They never want to leave, right? So with that, I have a microphone here. So I'm going to actually walk out into the audience because we're recording this for folks that weren't able to sort of get out here. So if you have a question, just raise your hand, and I'm going to find you sort of Jerry Springer style, except without the violence. And so just feel free to ask your questions. So if not, I'll have to come up with one myself. But don't make me do that. Right here, Dee Dee. There you go.
I have a question for T. With regard to solo practice in a small community or semi-small community like Amarillo, how is that going? Do you have any suggestions for someone who is looking at doing that after graduation?
Yes. As I said before, I worked at a firm before opening my own practice. But since I've opened my own practice, I just tapped into all of the people there in town. In the small community, you have the benefit of people are not standoffish. People want to help you. They want to see you succeed. And so I just networked with people there in town. Everyone had a lot of information, suggestions along the way, things that they did that they would have done differently, advice on everything from where to rent office space to who to use for these services and who not to use for these services, letting people know what practice areas you're looking into, and especially older attorneys, people that are getting ready to retire or people that are tapering off in their careers are always willing to refer you clients, always willing to send you business. As long as they know that you're going to treat those clients right and you're going to do a good job, they're always willing to refer business. And then they're always willing to help you when you get to an issue where it's like, I don't know what to do, especially when you're coming right out the door. Everything is, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And so having people that you can call and say, someone just came in and said they want a divorce. What do I do? Having those people that will say, okay, first thing you do is you have them fill this out. And so it's been a blessing, and it's been really good having at least certain people that I know I can always call when I have those questions, and no one has ever said, I'm not going to answer that, that's dumb. Everyone's always been willing to help.
Yeah, I mean, because that's really important. I've heard that a lot of advice for young lawyers is find a mentor. How did you go about finding those people to experience work? Because like you said, when you're a new attorney, I mean, you weren't new when you went solo, but you get those cases that walk in. I've never done that kind of case before, and you don't want to sort of commit malpractice. How did you find those people that could guide you in that process?
I think a big part of it is you just have to get over yourself. You have to get over feeling like I don't want to sound stupid or I don't want to ask the question. Early on, like the first week I opened the door, someone came in with a real estate issue. And I don't even think I took a real estate class in law school. But I knew two attorneys in town that was all they did. And so I picked up the phone, called them, said, hey, this is me. I've met you before. I have a real estate question. Can you help me with it, or can I send this person to you? And he said, no, you're not going to send it to me. Let me help you with it. I'll tell you exactly what to do. And so he held my hand and walked me through the issues of what needed to be done just because I was willing to call and ask the question.
Do you think that was part of sort of practicing because it was in Amarillo? I mean, did you find a similar thing like in New Orleans, in a bigger city? Did you also find that, or was it a little tougher?
Amarillo people are just nice. I didn't practice law in New Orleans. I was a paralegal when I was in New Orleans, and so it was a different environment for me because I wasn't the attorney. But in Amarillo, my colleagues there are just nice, and people are willing to answer your questions. And so I don't know if it's different in bigger cities or other cities. I just know that that's the way it is, and I'm not afraid to call and get a no, because I'll just call the next person.
Other questions?
I would add to that, there's a lot of resources that are now available online through the State Bar of Texas and Texas Young Lawyers Association. Texas Young Lawyers, because there's a growing percentage of young attorneys striking out on their own, the organization as a whole has recognized that and put together a lot of free resources. We love free when you're paying student loans. There's a lot of resources available through the website, and you can access those as a law student. Like our 10-minute mentor program videos cover a wide variety of topics. Maybe could even help you through law school classes. We also have Office in a Flash, which kind of walks through some of the steps for opening your own office somewhere. So don't discount some of those. There is a lot of benefit to having the face-to-face mentor and networking, but don't discount some of the resources that are available to you just by nature of being part of the State Bar of Texas.
All the way in the back. Maybe it didn't work out.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a question as a family member. I'm, as they say, a piled higher and deeper, a PhD in the healthcare system, and I've got nothing but good to say about the Texas Tech healthcare family here. I didn't go here, but I know them, and they're fantastic. My question, and I hope I don't seem politically impertinent, I know how to assess opportunities if my daughter were looking at different healthcare educational opportunities. When I hear things like rankings, when I hear things like tiers, help me understand, because I have to say I came here prejudiced in Texas Tech's favor. I'm a UT grad, I'm an Ole Miss grad, and I had to tell my professors that I took some classes here, y'all are not normal, you're so nice. That really applied to UT versus Ole Miss. Ole Miss is as nice as Texas Tech. But my question is, how does someone like my daughter who's looking at the UT number 10 or 11 or 14, 15, whatever the heck, or Emory's, or William and Mary's, or those things, because as a parent, I know I should say nothing, because if I like it, she might go in the opposite direction. So if you could help me be informed, I would really appreciate it.
I might actually be able to help you starting out on that, because I was a non-traditional student. I actually worked in healthcare for about 5 years before deciding to leave my job and start paying again to go through an educational system where people shot me questions. So, and I actually came to Texas Tech interested in the time at doing managed care type work. So there are joint degree programs for that kind of thing. If you finish your first year in law school, they have a joint degree program you can enter into in public administration. The public administration program actually has a very good healthcare management program that I did for a while. Because of specialization reasons, I decided to go somewhere else, but it's a good option. You'll learn quickly after you practice law, but not during the time when you're making the decision on where to go to law school, that the law school rankings game is a rankings game. If you look at the U.S. News and World Report's ranking, Tech is ranked one place. If you look at the National Jurist magazine ranking, Texas Tech is second or third in the country based on quality, affordability, job placement, things of that nature. There's another ranking that Texas Tech is ranked in the top 20 consistently. It's nice, and it would be great to tout one number versus another number versus a third. What you find, a lot of those rankings have to do with the physical size of the library and the number of physical books that you hold in your library, which in today's electronic world, I really doubt whether it's relevant or not. Here's why I chose Texas Tech. I was accepted and had scholarships to those other schools. I was living in Central Texas after graduating from a school that lost to Wisconsin in the Sweet 16 last night. We don't want to get into that. Made a decision after looking at the schools on the environment that I was going to find myself in. I was a non-traditional student, like I said. I was married at the time. I wanted to learn the law, but I didn't want to go through a boot camp type experience where I felt like I was being shot at every opportunity. One of the things that I found that I really enjoyed about Texas Tech, and I think part of it's being a unique to West Texas type environment, is that it was very laid back here. It is not scary to go into the classroom and have a professor ask you a question. You do your best to answer the question, and he or she will move on, and you'll do your best. We'll say I had this more than one time. I was sitting in a tax class and answered a question correctly, and I think it surprised the professor that I answered it correctly. So he then proceeded to ask me the next 4 questions that were in more probing detail, and of course I struck out on all of those. But one of the unique things I experienced here was I had my fellow students sitting around me who were raising their hands to try to take the heat because they were trying to bail me out and they were trying to provide their input. It wasn't to showboat on their part. It was to be polite because that's what we do around here.
That's called jumping on a grenade for a friend.
And I appreciated people's efforts to jump on the grenade. The professor didn't go for it. He called me the rest of the time. But at least it was a noble attempt. So that was the decision I made. I made a decision at the time to look beyond the rankings game. I also got accepted to Boston University, which at the time had the #1 ranked healthcare program in the country. I couldn't afford to go to BU. Boston's an expensive place. I liked living in Texas. I liked the affordability, and I really liked the people here. And Lubbock's a place that kind of grows on you. That's kind of a scary thing. I mean, I remember saying at the time when I was going to law school, okay, 3 years of law school, and then I'm out of here. And then I worked for Sam Cummings, who's the federal district judge here. He made me an offer, and I said, okay, a 2-year clerkship, and then I'm out of here. And now I'm a partner at a firm here. We've got an office in Amarillo. We've got another office in Dallas and an office in Lubbock. And it's not bad doing what I do. The pay is good, and getting to travel back and forth to Dallas when I need to work on cases in Dallas. Southwest Airlines is a great thing, and I still get the benefit of going home here at night with a 5-minute rush hour. So those things are all good. Y'all have something else to add?
I'll ditto everything he said on the rankings. The other thing for me was that bar passage rate, those numbers don't lie. And Texas Tech is always, always in the top 3 schools of having a very high bar passage rate. Because it's one thing to go to a law school because of X, Y, Z, but you want to be equipped to pass the bar exam when you're done at the end of those 3 years. This university will prepare you to pass that bar exam at the end of those 3 years and the 3 months that you study for the bar exam following it. And that was a big deal to me because yes, I want to go to a top-tier school, so they say. But if I'm not going to pass the bar exam at the end of it, then what was the benefit of all of it? And so Texas Tech will take care of you in that front. But the thing that got me here is kind of funny, and it's the thing that keeps me coming back, is that my mom and I, like you and your daughter, came for Texas Tech, and I came from New Orleans, so it was a big difference. People told us that Lubbock was right outside of Dallas. And we got to Dallas, and my mom and I were so excited. We were almost there, and that road just never ended getting to Lubbock. But we got here to tour the law school, and if you haven't met Donna Williams and Sherry Livermore, you need to go and meet them. We got here, we met those two people, and they sold us. I mean, they were just, my mom's biggest concern was that I was going to be so far away and who was going to take care of me. And those two ladies said, we'll take care of her. She'll be fine. And I mean, over those 3 years, that became my two aunts at Texas Tech University. And they still check on me, and they still call me, and they still call for pictures of my little girl. And so, you know, I just knew I was here, and there were people that cared about me. If I went in there and said, I'm stressed, this class is stressing me out, they would, sit down and chat with us and tell us what's going on. If I said I was sick, they would find me a doctor to go and see. And so, you know, that was just important to me because I was a long way from home, I was a long way from family, and I was getting a great education, but personally I needed to be taken care of as well, and I knew I had people that looked out for me to make sure I was okay.
And that's actually a really good question because I know that's on a lot of people's minds. But the student panel tomorrow, that'll be a good time to ask that question too, because those students are current law students, so they went through this decision not too long ago. There's some pre-law advisors actually here from different law schools that probably have their own opinions about the rankings and things, and so if they're around, you can ask them. I'll spare you my long answer for what I think about the rankings, but they're an axe, not a scalpel, if that makes any sense. Like they're useful for sort of broadly sorting schools, but really, really horrible at telling any real difference between two schools that might be separated by a small thing. They really, if I were doing the rankings, I'd probably have a top 25 that was national, and then after that, I wouldn't rank anybody else nationally. I'd do regional rankings because every school is regional. Harvard's region is the world, and then all the regions sort of get smaller and smaller after that. So, you know, a school might be ranked 3rd, 5th, or 50th, but if they're in the Northeast, they're going to place as many students here in Texas as we place up there, which is not very many, right? That's where that ranking is not going to really help you get a job in Texas. They'd be better off coming to Tech. So that's my little 2 cents on that. But.
Well, and recognize you're going to get an education that's going to go toe-to-toe with a lot of those schools. Because I'll say right now, 2 of the schools that you mentioned, William and Mary and UT, I have been published in journals at both of those schools. And I'm 4 years out. So it's not like that's out of your reach or anything. I will sing the praises of the education that I received here at Tech Law over and over and over again, just because, I mean, within, I want to say 6 months of passing that bar, I got an email from William and Mary's Environmental Policy Journal, and the guy was calling me, Professor Pratt, and I'm going, I've had my license like 2 months, but great, good job. So, I agree with everything that's said, and yes, you're going to get an education here that'll go toe-to-toe with any of those schools.
One of the things I wished I knew going into law school was the reality of the job market and all of those things. I think when I went into law school, there was an assumption on my part that you've got to pick only the top 1 to 50 law schools in the country in order to guarantee that you've got a job in a big firm. The reality is the ABA Journal, the American Bar Association, which kind of oversees our profession voluntarily, they do a study every year on attorneys who are going through the profession. And here are the stats. 50% of all attorneys are in solo practice or have a second lawyer. That's half of the lawyers in this country. The percentage of the LA law type experience where you've got 1,000, 2,000 lawyers in the firm, obviously those firms exist. I've actually represented some of those firms. They exist, but you're not necessarily tied into where you went to law school based upon the name of your law school. We have attorneys who are working in skyscraper firms in New York, for example. When we take teams to New York to compete in different moot court competitions, we call John Beck on the phone. We call other attorneys on the phone who are with large firms overlooking Central Park, and we say, hey, can we do some practice rounds with you the day before our competition goes on? And they bring us in. There's access to get there. There's access to do pretty much what you want to do. It's just a matter about deciding as you go through the law school process if what type of environment you're looking for, what work-life balance you're looking for, and making those decisions. That decision is not usually made on the choice of law school but primarily it's made on how you perform when you get in law school.
And for people that are wondering, LA Law was a television show that was on TV in the back right around when color television came out. I'm just kidding. I know what
Probably before most of you guys were born. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't even know what the lawyer TV show on would be now. I watch too many of them. But anyway, next question. Oh, Brianna.
Hi, my question is for Larry, since you practice in appellate. And I know we've hit rankings pretty hard already, but for someone that's looking at an Article III clerkship or ultimately working in appellate in a field that is normally reserved for, or traditionally from what I can research, for those big names, how has tech given you the connections or ability to be in that field?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. The question is twofold. I understand, first of all, you're looking for an Article III job, so you're wanting to work in the federal system for either at a district court or an appellate court, and that in and of itself, let me address that first. And then the second thing I want to address then is how that ties into people who are wanting to go into specialized fields such as appeals. The first answer is your opportunities of getting into a judicial clerkship through Texas Tech are very good. We place attorneys who are new grads every year throughout this part of the country. Jason Jordan, who's one of our grads from a couple of years ago, I coached him on a moot court team, went to work for the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans, was based out of Houston, and then when he wrapped that up, he then took another clerking gig for the Supreme Court of Texas, so he has experience on both the federal and the state side. And the good thing about I'm a board certified appellate specialist, so we kind of have a small community of people we deal with. As a small circle, you have a lot of contact with a lot of the judges and justices that you ordinarily wouldn't have in the profession. And you get to sit down and talk with them at continuing legal education events. When they come into town for oral arguments, they sit here at this law school. You get a chance to talk to them. And the comments that we've received about the quality of tech lawyers who are going into clerking positions are always very good, because not only do we recommend high-quality folks to go into those jobs, we also have a class that a lot of times comes in here where we sit down and say, okay, from day one when you walk into your clerkship, here's what you need to expect, and here are the things that you need to do. So I think that's a good point that you need to keep in mind. The second part of your question dealt with the practice of appellate law. I think the practice for appellate law for most people is a transition that takes a number of years to develop. A lot of times what you find when people are practicing appellate law, they've been a trial lawyer for a number of years. They become specialized in one area of law, working on plaintiff's work or insurance defense or coverage work or something, and then they start taking on appeals in those cases, and that's how that develops. My circumstance was a little bit unique because of a professor at Tech Law School who was working in private practice when I was wrapping up with Judge Cummings, gave me a call and said, would you like to work with me doing appeals? So I didn't have the same lead time that other people do. Now, I still do, half of my practice is still trial work, but I didn't have to have that. For someone interested in going into appellate work, it's a very good area to work in. We have a number of tech law grads throughout this part of the country in big firms, and frankly in some that do 1 and 2 lawyer firms that just specialize in that area. My best advice for you is find a program, wherever you are, that spends a very heavy emphasis on writing and research, and find a program that encourages you to get up in front of an audience and make arguments. The practice of law, a lot of the practice of law in litigation terms is about fear. It's about fear of what your client is willing to do to settle a case or to go to trial. It's about fear that you put in your opposing lawyer's eyes about what they're going to expect if they have to stand up in front of a judge. It's the fear of the process itself. And at this law school, we try to eliminate that as much as possible from beginning early on with having intra-school competitions where we encourage students to practice in moot court. As an aside, there's a moot court finals round across the hallway in the Hunt courtroom tonight. I actually have to judge the finals round tonight, so there's my plug for if you want to see what a moot court, what a practice appellate oral argument looks like. I think it's at 7 o'clock tonight in the Hunt courtroom. Please come by and check that out. The more experiences, though, that you get in front of an audience, the more experiences you get in standing up and saying, these are my best arguments and this is what I got and this is what I'm going to stick to, gives you the opportunity that when Dean Dickerson talks about hitting the ground running, you literally are running when you hit the ground. One of the things they do in legal practice classes here is not only do you write an appellate brief, we actually teach oral argument to every first-year student who comes to the program. And in a couple of weeks, we will actually put on a practice oral argument for the first-year students so that when the first-year students stand up and they're doing it for a grade, they'll understand what we'd like them to do. And it's one of these things that it's not just a make-believe program, it's something that actually translates into real-life practice skills. So I think that helps shorten that lead time to getting into appellate practice, but certainly going the judicial clerking route certainly helps along the way.
Back here.
What are some ways in which you feel tech has prepared you or given you an advantage over peers who attended other schools?
I didn't hear the last part of what she said.
Oh, basically, just what do you think tech's done to prepare you that gives you an advantage over when you face lawyers who went to other schools? So I don't know, Laura, you practice here in town, so you probably you're it's tech versus tech in a lot of those trials. But can anybody just kind of speak to that? Have you ever been in a situation where you kind of felt like, yeah, I learned this in law school, and I can tell the person across the table from me did not learn this in law school? Have you ever? Without naming names, of course.
Well, really quick, I would just throw out there that the network here is fantastic. Because I'm involved with Texas Young Lawyers Association, I actually am the District 3 director that serves for this region on the board of directors. And I think this year we had 7 or 8 on that board that were graduates of Tech Law or Texas Tech. And I think that speaks very highly of the school, that it's not only, it's just like Dean Dickerson was saying, it's not only we're getting out and we're getting jobs all over the state, but we're getting out, we're getting jobs all over the state, and we're taking leadership roles in our local and state bar. And so that network is one that's readily available whether you stay in Lubbock or whether you practice somewhere else. And so I'd say that network is great. Also, the education level, like I mentioned before, is going to really put you in the position to hit the ground running. I guarantee it.
I'll say, when I came here, I wanted to be a corporate attorney. When I graduated in 2009, I had a job with a corporate firm in Houston, Texas. And then the job market blew up. My job disappeared. And I ended up at a firm doing Social Security disability, something that was not on my radar, something I didn't even know was a specialized practice of law. And while at that firm, I started doing family law. And everything was hit the ground running, on my feet, going into court every day, especially with the family law stuff, being in court regularly. And now with my own practice, I focus on family law and criminal defense. And had it not been for being at a school that provided a broad education, I would have been scrambling. I would have not known what to do if I had just focused on doing one thing and then that thing went away. I would have been going back to the drawing board, trying to figure out what to do in these new areas. But because of the education I got here, the family law stuff, I took a lot of family law classes here because I guess I did have an interest in it, and it's helped a lot. And the criminal defense as well. The classes that I took here, some of which were required classes because they want you to have a broad base and not just go down one trail, helped me to be able to be in these practice areas that weren't on my radar when I was even leaving law school.
Within our firm practice, we've got lawyers from who went to law school all over the country. Dave Mullen went to University of Chicago. Steve Ward is from North Carolina. John Brown went to Hastings. David Langston is one of my partners here in Lubbock, went to Georgetown. We work well as a firm because when you come to somebody who graduates from tech, they're not going to write a law review answer to a question. They're going to be very practical in their approach. And in turn, that saves the client money, but it also provides important information and resources for the lawyer to take back into the courtroom to put in a brief or to argue to the judge. And I haven't seen a quote unquote quality break based upon the graduates of one law school or another. But the thing I've seen about Texas Tech law grads in general is that they're all well prepared to practice law, and I don't think you have a criticism of that anywhere you find a tech lawyer. The thing I like the most about tech law grads is there is a little bit of a camaraderie where you can call up someone if you know they went to tech law school, and even if you're in an adverse relationship with each other because your clients hate each other, you say, okay, look, let's work together, and you need to go on vacation in June. Let's work on our schedules and getting around that. It is not the same type of antagonistic relationship that you sometimes find. I think that's taught from the first year here in law school when you're divided into sections and you've got those students in your sections during that time for the rest of the year. So you learn early on, don't piss off the people around you because you're going to have to work with them later on. And I think that kind of carries on in working relationships too.
All right, so I've always been interested in a law education, and that's why I'm here. I know there's been talk about the job market a little bit. I'm currently working for a Fortune 10 company, and I really enjoy it, but I want to pursue my dream. But I take a look at some of the salary figures coming out of college and coming out of law school, and it scares me. It scares me to come out with $80,000 worth of debt and make 40, 50 grand my first couple of years. Can you kind of describe your first 2 years out of school? And this is just for anybody.
I work for the government, so my paycheck is not that big, but I'll tell you right now, I am doing great. And the debt, that is one of the biggest reasons I feel like Texas Tech was a good fit for me, is because for the value of education, touched on it before, I really truly believe you can go toe-to-toe with any other school out there coming out of tech law. For that education that I received, my level of debt is so much smaller than the cousin that I have that went to Chicago. And maybe this is just revealing a little bit of my character and where my values were at, but she's logging really, really hard billable hours right now to kind of compensate for that. And again, I work for the government. I'm 8 to 5. I rarely take my work home, and I actually have accelerated my debt payoff from law school. So I don't think, I tell law students that either work in our office or I see over here at Texas Tech, I say, do the cost-benefit analysis. If you're a numbers person and that really gets you jazzed, then yeah, you can do that and see what you're looking at. But I know my situation was very similar to T's. I got out of school. I had 2 large firms, Dallas-Fort Worth area, that said, we want to hire you, and both those offers fell through. That was the most terrible phone call of my life, because it was definitely like, yeah, we just got word that the firm is putting a hiring freeze, so we're not taking on any new associates. And yet, 4 years later, I've been at the same position that I have right now. I've gotten a raise every single year that I've been in that position, because my boss appreciated what I was doing and said, no, I want to keep you, and this is how I keep you. So I definitely think that speaks highly of the school, because when I got out, it was, I'm going to start you at this, and then we'll see where we go from there, and every year it's gone up. But yeah, it's not worth being scared over, it's worth being practical about. And here at Tech Law, you are going to get a great education for a great price.
T, being a solo, that's probably, if anybody's considering that, you're not paying yourself sort of a regular salary all the time. You don't necessarily know what things are going to be like from time, from month to month or year to year, or whatever. When you were starting out, was that a little scary? And sort of how do you face that question?
Yes, it was very scary starting out, because I was going from a guaranteed paycheck to not knowing what my pay was going to be, especially being self-employed. You know, you're going to have to pay all of your overhead before you ever take a dime home. And so I have student loan debt. My husband's an attorney as well, and he has student loan debt. So it was a big fear. But I do what I love. And so I feel like anything that I'm doing that I love, I'm going to get the benefit out of it. I didn't become an attorney because I saw a six-figure salary at the end of the day. I knew people in law school that wanted to be attorneys because they thought that degree gave them a big fat paycheck at the end of the day. It does not. It does not. That's not the story for most of us. And so I know that I went in loving the practice of law, and it was nothing else for me to do. And so I do what I love, and I get the benefit out of it. I take care of my clients in turn take care of me. And I haven't missed a meal, and I haven't missed a bill, and so that's what I concern myself with. We're okay, and we do fine, and you put in good work, you get a good result out of it.
Let me give you a little secret about law firm economics, too, okay? The practice of law is a business. It is a profession, but it is a business. So for anybody who believes, and this was something that I believed back in the Stone Age, that you walk across the stage, you get a diploma in hand, and you have a job offer where just because of your inherent goodness, they're going to pay you a lot of money. It doesn't work that way. The way law firm economics work, for the most part, is for every dollar you put in your pocket, you need to expect to collect 2 to 3 times that from your client. So if you want a $100,000 a year job, you need to expect to collect $300,000 in collections. Those aren't my numbers. Those are big firm numbers, small firm numbers. We actually are probably a little lower than that. We're at about 2.5 times. But when you're making a decision on what law school to go to, when you're making a decision on the type of law you want to practice or the type of firm you want to be in, you need to go in eyes wide open about that expectation. Sure, they may pay you $160,000 a year when you graduate from law school, and we have graduates who are making that. Heck, we pay $100,000 a year out of Lubbock. But there's an expectation in return, and that expectation in return is you're going to be expected to bring in or to bill and collect 2 to 3 times that amount to make that salary. And that's where the trade-off comes in. The trade-off that comes in is then how much time are you wanting to put into the office, because you're not going to be able to do that with a 40-hour week and make $160,000. Mathematically, it doesn't work out. You can make a decision and opt to make less and get a better quality of life or better time at home. So those are some of the balancing things that you need to consider. Professor Ottenreith is actually in the back of the room, and she was one of our grads who went to a big firm in the Metroplex and then made the decision to come back here. So if you get a chance to meet her later, you may want to ask her the questions about what she experienced as a tech law grad going into a really big firm from the outset. But I think the answers are completely correct, that obviously keeping in mind finances, student loan issues, cost of living expenses and everything, which, by the way, all that's much lower in Lubbock than it is in other places in the state.
You will also have the benefit of having a clearer picture of what the job market is, because I know for us, things were going well. Things were trucking along fine when we went into law school, and then all of a sudden things just bottomed out. And so we were, our class was just left like, what do we do now? And so fortunately, yes, we were at a school that we didn't rack up a whole heap of debt in going to law school, because I tell you, 6 months down the road, when you get that degree in hand, those lenders have their hand out. And so, you kind of want to keep that in mind, and you have a picture now of what the job market is like. There are jobs out there. I mean, we're not going to tell you you're going to get out and no one's getting a job. That's not going to happen. But you have to be realistic of how many jobs are out there at this figure, how many jobs are out there at this figure, how many of us are going, am I going to be that person that wants to be a solo practitioner, and what is that going to look like for me when I graduate, and how are the finances going to work on that end?
And then later, ask that question again later for when we do the financial aid part, because then the other component is there's some repayment plans and stuff that exist now that I don't think that they're fairly recent. I don't know that you guys had some of the pay-as-you-earn stuff that might make things a little more sort of palatable for the early first few years out of graduation. We have time for a couple more questions. Yep. Can I just throw it? No, I'm just kidding. I felt like this is like Easter Sunday, like I'm blessing you guys with this Catholic joke.
My question is about, I guess, your student life when you were here, because I've talked to attorneys in the office where I worked over the summer, and I have friends in law school and other friends who are attorneys as well. And I know that at some schools it's really competitive, like people are hiding books in the library so that you won't do well on your project. And when you have study groups, apparently they're giving people wrong answers so they could get to the top of the class. Does that go on here? Is it really hostile like that? Or people?
I never experienced that.
I think we did that every other week. No,
Only the strong survive.
I think it's actually an honor code violation at Texas Tech to actually take materials out so that somebody can't have access to it. The whole point is that everybody needs equal access to things. The environment itself, I think, is a pretty laid-back environment. I had a section my first year in law school. Now, again, non-traditional, but the rest of my section really kind of enjoyed having a race after the last class was out to find themselves so you could get over to the bar quickest at the end of class. I'm not recommending that for practice for first year, but our group apparently enjoyed that. Good environment with a lot of activities. The chili cook-off, like Dean Dickerson was talking about, is tomorrow. I have to judge the chili cook-off again this year. Last year we had to eat 33 bowls of chili. That's not a lot of fun, but it's a good. The reason I encourage you to go there tomorrow is go talk to first and second and third year law students and find out what's going on with their lives. Find out what they are so happy about during law school. Find out about what they wish they had known during law school. And the good thing about tech law students is you can walk up to anybody and ask them a question, and they're going to try to help you answer the question. I don't think I ever ran into anybody either during the 3 years of law school or bringing people in now for employment or working with the law school where I just found somebody who wasn't approachable.
I never experienced that. I mean, I would say that you would be more apt to go and find the book and it was already tabbed off by the person that had it first to let you know, this is the section that you go to. I mean, it was just, my student life experience was great. I had tons of friends, I had friends that I studied with and friends that were just, exhale with friends, that may not have been in my same section, but we just hung out. And then there's tons of student life organizations, Women's Caucus, just different student organizations that when you're first year, you kind of go to class with the same people all the time, but through the student organizations that don't demand, I don't think, any of a 1L's time other than you go to the meeting, you go and get a free lunch when you want to. But it's just a time to just meet other people, talk with other people about law school, not about law school. It was a great environment. I enjoyed my time here at Tech.
Kind of flip that on its head. I would encourage every single person in here to try and adopt that mindset, especially when you come to Texas Tech, because I made it my business that if I could help somebody, I was going to. Because those are people that I need to be able to pick up the phone and call when I'm out practicing. And they need to know they can do that with me as well. I mean, I feel like that's what makes our profession what it is. And I never experienced that type of action or negativity in any of my classes, and I would really challenge all of you to adopt that as I'm not going to be this way when I get into class, because it definitely makes for a better environment, and I feel like it helps you learn better as well for what you're going to experience outside the doors. Because people are going to know you're a jerk really fast.
I was just going to add one thing. In addition to the students being approachable, one of the things that I found that was a very positive experience here from a law school perspective was that the professors are incredibly easy to approach.
Yeah.
There are numerous times you're going to go through your first year in law school and not have a clue what they're talking about. They're going to get into the rule against perpetuities in property, and you're going to sit there and say, I don't know what they're talking about. The benefit, and we may still not know what's going on, that's right. The benefit is it's okay not to know here. Wait until the end of the class and catch the professor on the way out of class, or set up a time in our office later on and say, okay, I don't understand why we're doing this, and I don't understand where. And so they will work with you separately to say, okay, let's make sure that we understand what's going on here, what the doctrine is we're learning about. In addition, you've got tutors who are assigned in your first year classes who are second and third year law students who've been through the rigmarole at this law school before, and they will also sit down with you. And that was very valuable to me because we have a lot of type A's in the legal profession. We have a lot of people who want to pretend that they know the answers and they don't want to reveal that they don't know the answers. And so it makes it a safe place to go talk to people so that you can feel like you're making decisions and you're doing the right things, but it's in a safe environment too.
Really try not to be that guy in class. Every class has that guy or that girl.
That guy.
Try not to be that guy or that girl.
Don't be that guy.
One more question. Does anybody have any other up there? There we go.
Okay. Okay, so I work in a law firm in downtown Austin. I've been in the Austin legal market for a few years now. And all the attorneys that I work with, great people. And when I tell them I'm considering tech, I'm into a lot of other higher ranked schools, so to speak. And they're like, well, you know, if you go to tech, you're going to have to be in like the top 5% of your class if you want a good job. Like, you're going to have to be in the top 5 to 10. That's what I'm being told over and over again. So I guess my question is, any of your classmates that you've kept up with, people that you know that went here, can you give us a general idea of how they've fared if they were not in that top bracket coming out of law school?
Is it that you're being told that you have to be in the top 5 or 10% to get a job at a big firm, or just to get a job, period?
In general. So not math majors.
No.
I know where that's coming from.
I would disagree with that. Across the board, no. You know, I had friends over the spectrum of where people could have been ranked in the class, and all of us were employed 6 months after graduating from tech, no matter where we were ranked in the class, no matter if we graduated with a job or found a job sometime after graduation, all of us had jobs. And, you know, I had a really good friend that was in the top 10%, if not 5%, that got a job at a really big firm making lots of money. And within 8 months of being there, realized that that was not the life for him. And so now he's, oddly enough, in Las Cruces at their district attorney's office and loves it. You know, I mean, and that is kind of going back to your question, he was making a whole lot of money. And by comparison, he's not making nearly as much money now, but he's doing what he loves. And so it makes up for that. But I would not agree with that statement that you would have to be in the top 5 or 10% of the class to get a job at all.
Our job placement rate, I believe, for 9 months after graduation is about 90%. So you can't have all 90% of the top 5% of the class by math.
By math.
I hope you guys are hearing in all of this that law school is a process of like self-evaluation and self-awareness. And that through that process, you are going to learn, you know, what am I comfortable with as far as where I want to work, what I want to get paid, how much I want to work, how hard I'm going to work, all of that.
What am I doing?
Yes, what am I doing? Do I love what I'm doing? I mean, all of that is part of the process. And you're going to find that wide spectrum, you're going to fall anywhere on it. And I can say with assurance, I don't have any of my friends from law school, and I kind of split, you know, 2 classes because I graduated December 09, so I had some friends in 09 and then some in 2010, and all of them were employed. So, yeah, top 5, top 10 are probably going to be more likely picked up by the large firms, but is that necessarily where I wanted to be?
And that's where that comes from. It's not it's big firms, because that's the way big firms are. Everybody wants to be making 150, 160, so that's where everybody wants to work, even though only about a quarter of right-out graduates work at big firms. Before I went to law school, I was kind of like, I worked at a law firm in Dallas called Baker Botts. It's one of these stereotypical big law firms that works you to death and pays you a lot of money that you can never spend. Because you're in the office all the time. Seriously, they would buy you dinner so that you wouldn't leave, like so that you didn't have to go home. And so we knew there was a list, because there was a bunch of us wanted to go to law school types working there, because it was 240 attorneys in that office, just in that office. So we had a bunch of us that were like paralegals, peons at the bottom of the pyramid. And so we were like, there's a list that says where you have to be in the class to get an interview. And like, I'm sure it wasn't secret, but we thought it was. So we thought we were all like cloak and dagger figuring it out. So we went to HR, we got a hold of it, and that's kind of what it said. It said, and don't quote me on this because I don't know if it's still like this or not, but at the time it was sort of like Harvard was top half, UT was top quarter, U of H was top 10% because it was a Houston firm, and then South Texas was top 2, not 2%, but 2. So that was kind of how they worked it out. That was just to get an interview. That wasn't like who they would hire. That was just to get an interview. So the big firms kind of, because they're corporations, they're really not businesses in the way that T's business is. They're corporations. They know they're going to get this many in every year, and this many are going to leave after 2 years. Like it's a machine. And so they have to have some way of cutting it, so that's how they do it. Does that mean there's no Texas Tech people at those firms? No. I mean, there's South Texas people at the big firms in Houston. There's Texas Southern people at the big firms in Texas. But generally speaking, yes, the higher up in the rankings you go, the larger percentage those firms will interview. That doesn't mean they're going to hire them. That just means they're going to get an interview. But again, you may not want that job. You may be, looking to do something else. So you have to take that with a grain of salt. What happens is lawyers and law students skim, and they don't read everything, and they don't hear. And then they distill. So like, who's familiar with like toplawschools.com? Like it gets on there, right? What's the advice to everybody on that site? Retake the LSAT. That's just retake it. I've got cancer. Retake. My wife's leaving me. Retake the LSAT. She'll come back to you. Because the general advice is like, yeah, if you get a 125, you should retake the LSAT because the LSAT is kind of important in getting into law school, but it's not the be-all, end-all. But eventually, over time, the repeating of the advice and of the stats and stuff, the nuance gets dropped off until you're left with, if you don't go to Harvard, Yale, or Stanford, you're going to die living in a van down by the river. You know what I mean? Why do they still know that reference? Because that was a long time ago.
Now, the other ridiculous thing about all of that is, after about 2 years out of law school, it's about your performance on the job. It has nothing to do about where you went to law school. So we have people who move all the time to big firms from small firms, and they leave big firms and they go to small firms. It really is, let me say it this way. The people who are writing the books telling you all the gloom and doom that you've got to pick the right law school or else you're going to be destitute living in a hole with rats chewing at your feet. They are making money telling you that you're going to be destitute living in a hole with rats chewing at your feet. There are opportunities to do other things, regardless of where you go to law school. I mean, we hope you come here, but you go somewhere else, you're going to have opportunities to go there. And your life is not fixed in time where the one decision you made to go to law school affects you the rest of your life. No, it has more to do with what you do when you get to law school. If you get along with people, that's a big one. How you perform in your classes, that's a big one. And then what you do when you get that first job to build a reputation for yourself. And that has far more to do than whether or not you pick somebody who was on the top 2 of the college or the law school list or the top 150.
And the fact of the matter is, it's law school, so you're going to be going to school with a lot of people that are extremely smart, just like you. So someone's going to be the top 5 or 10%, and someone's not. So, I mean, it's hard to, I don't want to say get over that, but don't let that consume you, and don't feel, no matter where you go, don't feel like if you're not the top 5 or 10%, it's over. Game over, I have to do something else, I failed. No, you haven't. Mathematics say someone's going to be the top 5 or 10% and someone is not, and that doesn't mean that you failed. That doesn't mean it's over. That doesn't mean you're not going to get a job.
And given that most of you are going to graduate in the top quarter of your class, that probably scares the heck out of you that you may not mathematically, not all of you mathematically will finish in the top 5 to 10% of the class.
Yeah, but I mean, just... it's a reality. It's a reality, and no one tells you. So I'm telling you, no one else is going to tell you when you walk into that building at the end of that first semester that it's going to become someone's reality. So don't let that break you. Don't let that crumble you. Just keep working hard. And also, I feel like don't go in with that mindset that I have to be a robot and I have to work sun up to sun down so that I can be that top 5, that top 10% person, because that's not going to be healthy for you either. I mean, work hard, study hard, do your best, and at the end it's all going to play out the way that it should, but just don't beat yourself up if it doesn't play out the way all of your life has up until that point, because law school is just a different ballgame.
Well, with that